Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and this week I'm talking with Nikola Howard, who is the UK's leading expert in low carb. And she'll be telling us about her background with sugar and what brought her to this other way of eating that completely transformed her relationship with sugar, with food, and with herself. And just before we get to our chat, I'd like to invite you to my website, aftersugarclub.com, to surf around and make the most of the free resources there, like the videos about what to eat, how to find unprocessed whole foods at the supermarket or the grocery store, and also about gut health and including fermented probiotic foods and drinks in your diet. You can also go to the tab Simple Guide to download your simple guide to getting more energy with less sugar, and you can get my 5 tips to help you with cravings on the podcast page. Just click on the podcast tab on aftersugarclub.com, and you can also find me on my Facebook page Life After Sugar, as well as on Clubhouse, Instagram at My Life After Sugar, where I post pictures of what I eat and what I do, so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy, active, joyful life even when you don't eat sugar. All right, here's my chat with Nikola Howard. So I'm talking today with Nikola Howard, who is the UK's leading low-carb expert. And Nikola, I'm interested in knowing about what your life was like before when you were still eating sugar.
I think the simple answer to that question is it was rubbish. I didn't think it was, but I had no energy. I had pain. I had horrible skin. I have dry skin anyway, and that's sort of not resolved itself, but it was definitely like uber itchy and all that stuff. It was just, and I got really hangry. So I definitely suffered with reactive hypoglycemia. And so if I hadn't eaten in like 2 hours, it was a big problem. And all my friends and all my work colleagues knew it was a big problem. And if I started to get grumpy, it's like, have you eaten something?
Yeah, it's like that Snickers ad. I don't know if you have that in the UK, but we've got this advert for Snickers, which we used to call marathons.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like someone's completely changed their whole personality and their whole appearance. And then the friends are like, have a Snickers, have a snack.
Yeah. I don't think we have that one, but we definitely have the Mars advert. A Mars a day makes you work, rest and play.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I definitely have the marathon, peanuts and chocolate marathon. So I definitely have that, like from when it was back then. But I mean, I haven't watched commercial television in so long now. I couldn't tell you if they advertise not anymore, because
well, they still do. And when you had this hangry, which is hungry and angry together, what did that actually look like for you? Like, how did you feel and what did you do at that time?
I don't suffer fools gladly at the best of times, but and I know one of the things I've worked on personally anyway, I have a big, why are you being silly? Why can you not just see that this thing should work this way? And I have that, and I know that if I don't moderate myself with that, I can get very short with people. That there was no filter on that. So it was that whole, if someone was doing something that I deemed easy, it may or may not have been easy to that person, but if I deemed it to be easy, well, why don't you just do that way? Why don't you just do that? And I had a very accusatory sort of way of being with it. And it was very don't ask me stupid questions because you're going to get your head bitten off, essentially, was how it was when I was hangry.
And were you aware of that, or did other people make you aware of it?
I got made aware of it. I didn't have, you never have self-awareness, especially when you're younger, because of course when I was deep in the sugar was when I was in my 20s. And because I've been doing low carbing since 1999. So for me, I was between 29 and 30, or 20 and 30 are your formative years anyway. I had no tact back then. Nicola back then was a very different lady. And so I didn't really get made aware of that particular behavior until I was probably in my 40s, where at that point, because I was being unself-aware, I'd fallen off the wagon and I was back with the carbs and I was doing whatever. And one of the people I was dating at that point pointed out to me that I was patronizing them. And I said, no, just that's easy. Why do you not? And it was them that actually brought that up to me and made me aware that that was what I was doing. And and of course, I never wanted to do that ever. It's like, no, that's horrible. And I then let all my friends know of, if you find me doing that, let me know, because I need to change this.
Right. And who would have thought that, there's a link between what you eat and sort of how patronizing you are?
Well, it's I think because of the way sugar affects your brain, where sugar is massively excitatory to the brain, and that was basically making my brain race. And I've got a fast-paced brain anyway. I pick stuff up, I connect, like I call my superpower connecting the dots, because I can look at a gestalt system and go, that's the bit that's broken, that's the bit we need to fix. And it's always been very, very easy for me to make those connections and figure out how things work. It's just the way my brain works. So where it was racing anyway, and then I was getting hungry because my brain was thinking it was starving, it then just made everything, my brain wants to get to the shortcut, it wants to get to the end. Why are you not keeping up with me?
Yes. So tell me, just to go back a few years, what made you become low carb? I don't even know if it was called low carb in 1999. But what made you change your diet?
A guy at work called Tim, who I am eternally thankful for, gave me a copy of Dr. Atkins. And I read it, and the science made total sense, because I did physics and chemistry at school. I had a passing whatever for biology, but hadn't really paid much attention to it. But from a logical perspective of, if you take away the things that cause hunger, you will stop being hungry. Yeah, I can, and the fact that I love meat, and I'm an utter carnivore to the point of I have until very recently, because of stress that's going on in my life, and I thought I'm going to add the vegetables back in because it's easier to deal with meals than just eating carnivore, which I had been carnivore since 2019. Okay. It was that whole, I love meat, I love veg, I love cream, I love butter, I love cheese. I hate not eating those things. Why on earth? And the science behind this tells me that this is actually great. Yes, let's do this now. Yes, please.
And before then, had you been on the low fat bandwagon?
Oh God,
the
yes.
rest of us.
Yes. I have the probably very standard history of doing Weight Watchers when I was in my late teens, when I was 16. I'd actually said to my mum, I need to fix the fact that I'm fat. I probably didn't say it like that, but so she took me off to Weight Watchers because that's the best she knew, and she then supported me with that. And I saw fruit as my savior, and whenever I got hungry, I would save my fruit exchange, because it was the exchanges system then, which was low carb but also low fat and quite high protein, which is it's not bad, but it's not great. And so I used fruit as my savior, where of course I now know that it was driving my hunger even more. And so and I definitely got very hangry with using that system, because I just wasn't eating enough anyway, let alone anything else. And so I definitely know that I had the mythos of low fat is the way to go. And then of course, because I'm a child of the 70s, so I grew up, my teenage years was with the 80s. Yeah. And that was just as the new guidelines came in 1983 in the UK, when the new fat guidelines came in. And I did my first go with Weight Watchers in 1986, or 1986, 87. So that was firmly in the grasp of, this is the new science and this is what we're going to do. And so I'm definitely a victim of that, what that happened with that particular guidance that came out of the US from the 70s.
And that in itself makes sense, or made sense. I mean, fat makes you fat. I mean, it makes total sense. And never mind that it's biologically completely inaccurate.
Well, it's that whole, one of the things I know we both share is that passion for language. Yeah. And the fact that calories in equals calories out is linguistically so simplistic, and it sounds so logical, and yet it is so utterly wrong.
I mean, but we believed it because we wanted to believe it. And then also because what we don't sort of grow up knowing about human biology. And nor do a lot of doctors, ironically.
Well, one of the, because I take a passing interest in history now, especially anyway, but now since I started this, where there was a whole bunch of research done in the 20s and 30s around what's called the carbohydrate lipid hypothesis. Mm-hmm. And most of that was done in the German language, because in that time, German was the de facto language for science, not English. And of course, World War II happened, and German was suddenly very unfashionable. And then, of course, America took over the lion's share of research. English became the dominant language, and all that lovely research that had got done just got forgotten. And so when it started to be rediscovered, reinvestigated very recently in the last 20 odd years, it's the science of the 40s, 50s, 60s and 70s has had 40 years on what we're now rediscovering. And of course, it's all, what is it? Science advances one death at a time, because people defend their pet hypotheses.
Yes, and which is, I don't have a scientific background, but from the little I know of science, real science seeks to invalidate its own hypotheses.
Yeah, I love what Gary Taube says about nutritional science is actually more like a religion. It defends a central dogma to the exclusion of everything else. Whereas, as you say, rational science is about, you form a hypothesis, you see if it is true by trying to both prove it and disprove it. You do experiments to do both things. And the problem with experimenting with human diet is you can't make people not eat, and you can't control all of the variables.
Exactly.
And that gives science a problem, because of course you can't put people in a box and make them just do this for however long you need to do to prove or disprove stuff. And so, I mean, admittedly, some of the stuff that was done back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, we would never do now because of ethics. And you can't prove empirically some of this stuff, because it would literally sometimes mean people's death, and that is not a good thing. But you've still got the defense of a tenant, and then you get research money that goes to support the central tenant, rather than actually doing rationality of is the central tenant correct? Yes, no, it's not. Let's do some other science to find something better. And we aren't there. We're just starting to be there in the last 10 years.
Yes, and we as consumers, and I include myself, we tend to think, well, if someone in a white coat, be it a doctor or a scientist, tells us this, then it must be true.
I was actually just saying that tonight in one of my group coaching calls, where we were talking about putting in boundaries. One of my ladies has unfortunately just had a quite a serious thing going on, and her doctor has recommended that she cut out the sugar. Thank you, doctor, awesome doctor. But she was then talking about the fact that one of her friends made her chocolate brownies, and she was talking about that, and then she mentioned that her mum was having, her mum would just do stuff anyway. And I said, well, if you're not going to be able to enforce the boundary with your mum, use the authority of the doctor. Sorry, mum, I can't do that because the doctor's told me not to do so. And it's that whole, it's borrowed authority. So yes, you are very right in the fact that once someone has that white coat, for want of the metaphor, people will listen to it, which is a good thing and potentially a bad thing.
Yes, absolutely. I think when I was studying linguistics at university, we looked at this kind of experiment with directive language, where the same thing was said by a person, like a person in regular clothes, then it was said by like a flight attendant with the uniform, then by a police officer with the uniform, then by a doctor with the white coat. And it's like the first person, the regular person, other people would say, whoa, what are you telling me what to do for? Whereas the very same directive, by another person with some kind of uniform, and people were like bowing to that person.
Well, I'm sure you must have heard of the experiment where effectively the white coat authority, they got a person in that was shocking a person in a chair. And the doctor was telling them it was okay to do that. And there was an
experiment.
And the percentage of people that would then shock the person, obviously this wasn't a real, this was actors, but they would shock the person to the person's death because the doctor told them to do so.
Yes, exactly. I teach this in one of my English lessons. Yes, to show, just how pliable we are with figures of authority. Yes, absolutely. So let's get back to you and to tell me. So you ate lots of sugar. You were hangry. You were awful. So your friends were telling you.
Oh yeah.
I'm just paraphrasing what you told me. Then you found Atkins, low carb. You did that. And then you stopped.
Yeah, I had a medical thing. So I was given a medical menopause at the age of 32. And because at that point I'd not done the work that I've done now, I had no resilience, I had no structures. And all I knew was that the stuff that had been given to me made me go batshit crazy. There's no other way of putting it. I was crying all the time. I was feeling like I just was all over the shop. And sugar and potatoes, because I've never met a potato I don't like, which of course, as we know, is effectively a very good sugar delivery vehicle to the blood. So I started self-medicating with sugar and potatoes because it made me calm. It calmed some of that utter to put it.
That's a good term for it.
It was literally my brain was going and so by putting the sugar and the carbs in, it then just chilled me out, and it allowed me to effectively start dragging myself through the day again. And I say dragging because it was literally all the same stuff came back. I was then tired all of the time. I would sleep like 14 hours at the weekend, every like Friday night, Saturday night, or Friday night and Sunday night, because I'd go out Saturday night. But even then with going out, it would still be an effort to go out. It would be social. And I'd sleep in on Sunday morning. I'd go to bed early on Sunday night, and I'd still wake up absolutely destroyed on Monday morning. And it was that whole, all the return of low energy, like really chronically, really bad dry skin, lethargy, pain, it all just came back. But at that point, I couldn't change away from what I knew was getting me through the day. I didn't have the resilience that I now know I have.
So you felt like you had no option. This was how it was going to be.
Yeah. But that is also part of the addiction journey, because I was definitely, because I didn't have the resilience of how to cope with stuff. My addiction vehicle of choice, apart from potatoes that make me feel great, is a pint of ice cream. So I would, if something stressful happened, rip the top off the Haagen-Dazs, either pralines and cream or cookies and cream that was in my freezer, rip it off, and I wouldn't stop until I'd hit the cardboard at the bottom of the packet.
Yeah, I remember that well. Yes, and coming from a place of, like you said, because you've never been taught any other type of coping mechanism. And most of us are never taught that by anyone. And I'm not blaming just the parents. I'm not even blaming anyone. But, where do we learn these coping mechanisms and skills? We just don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the stuff I deal with clients is all around unpicking effectively these comforting patterns we have. I am definitely of the school of thought, the school of psychology, where we are formed by our experience from the ages of 0 to 7. we then go through life running those childlike patterns through no fault of our own. That's just what happens, until we get to a point where we suddenly realize that this is happening. And then we start looking at that and start analyzing that. You could say it's a big cosmic joke. I believe we are all divine beings connected to everything through all time and space, put here in this human vehicle to have an experience, but we forget why we're here. And then we get given this stuff from the ages of 0 to 7, which is, well, this is how I survive. And then some people then never get to a point of, well, why am I here? What is my purpose? How can I do this? And they just run those childlike patterns forever. Whereas others, like, not to say I'm better or worse, it's more I discovered, well, yeah, I am not my thoughts. I am not these patterns. I am a divine being, and I can choose to do anything I like.
Well, sometimes I think, also from my personal experience, which is similar, this sort of awakening, is that you have to get to a point where, your body or something backs you into a corner and you have no choice but to change something.
Yeah.
And what was that thing for you?
I think definitely back in 1999, my hips were killing me. I had a 60-inch stomach. My hips were 52 inches. And it was just, I was knackering my knees, knackering my hips. And it was just pain. And I didn't fit anything. And it was just, I didn't want to be the way I was. But then coming forward to when I started doing the personal development, what actually made me start knowing sort of there is something more and starting to gain that resilience is actually my old day job. And we started putting in, it's interesting, 2 years ago, I'm still a we started putting in hierarchy. So creating an empowered workforce where you have a coaching culture where people are empowered to suggest and offer and do things, which in a council doesn't really actually work because councils are extremely hierarchical. But in terms of that, it was the whole, well, if I learned how to ask better questions, and by learning how to ask better questions of other people, I then started asking better questions of myself. And that was where I then started to think, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? What is driving this? How is this working? Rather than asking well, am I doing this right? Is this the right thing? Am I stuck here? Which of course are closed questions, and the brain won't give you good answers. Whereas if you ask the W questions, the possibilities, your brain is a problem solving, answer seeking machine. And if you ask it better questions, you get better answers, which again comes down to both of our joint love of linguistics and semantics. Yes. If you ask your brain better questions, you get better answers. And I learned better questions. And then I started getting better answers. And then I started looking for, well, how do I improve what my experience is? And that then led me into becoming a qualified coach, NLP practitioner, and a whole bunch of other stuff, including like intuitive work and various other bits and pieces that then, all of that really opens the world. How can I then help other people with that opening?
Fantastic. Amazing. And how old were you when you had this sort of epiphany?
Work started introducing the coaching stuff in 2014 or so. I then went and got qualified in 2016, which was just after I'd had a particularly interesting breakup with a partner. And we loved each other with food. So although I was saying I was low carb, I really was not. I was effectively using sophistry and go, oh yeah, it's quarter of a pot of custard. That's enough. Or 4 or 5 corn thins, they're okay. Which of course for my particular body, which for better or worse needs pretty much 0 carbohydrate to make any progress at all. It was just too much. So when I'd got out of that particular relationship and I got myself into a slightly better place there, it was like, well, yeah. And it coincided with I'm seeking meaning for myself. And then I bumped into the first mentor. And it's like, yeah, if you can help me with that, that will then help me to, apart from anything else, I've now got a much better relationship with my mum. because I now understand where she is what's called a visual person and I am a logical person. So I would overwhelm her with all the information and she would back away and would not want to engage because I was overwhelming her and it didn't work. Whereas now I understand that I can change and adapt, and I now have a much better relationship with my mum. And apart from anything, that's worth the money I paid for that coaching course.
Oh, wonderful. Absolutely. And so in the same way that eating sugar and carbs in your 20s, changed your personality, let's say, while you were eating them, not eating them also, from what I can tell, changed your personality, but in a more profound way.
Yeah, I think definitely I am now, it's a combination of both not eating the things that makes my brain race and makes me short-tempered and hangry and whatever, because of also then feeding my body the right food and feeding my mind the good concepts, positive concepts, which then allow me to communicate more effectively. By even communicating more effectively, that makes me a better person, because I can understand people's, I can be patient with people, whereas before I wasn't so much the patience. I've always been quite I went from being very passive and passive aggressive to being patient and being kind, I think would be the major league changes there. And that is the combination of both. That is the combination of taking away the things that was making me passive aggressive and also the nurture of the mind, then that personal development stuff that allowed me to then communicate more effectively.
Yeah, amazing. Yes. And so now you're an expert, UK expert in low carb, and you've created what we were talking about before. You've created sort of a framework, haven't you?
Yeah.
To help people. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So I out of all this personal development experience and the fact that I knew when I did it the first time, because effectively I had a go at it with just changing the food, and then of course because bad stuff happened, I then went back to the things that comforted me. When I then sort of got the personal development stuff in under my belt, I then sort of thought, well, hang on a minute, you need to change your mind as much as you change your plate. And in fact, if anything, it's more important to change your attitude towards the food you eat, because if you don't, you're going to go back to the way you were. And so I then created the HOPE protocol. So HOPE stands for healthy, optimal, purposeful eating. And I created a system that removes emotions from food. So you make rational choices. So nothing is good, nothing is bad. You aren't sinful or wrong or naughty if you choose to eat something that I call non-optimal. A non-optimal food is something that has no nutrient density, is packed full of carbohydrate and or seed oils and or chemicals. But if you make that non-optimal choice, that is your choice to make, but you make it from an empowered adult place of choice, not a choice of being a victim to food and thinking, well, I may as well just do that because I'm feeling a bit like this. And so, of course, then you've got your optimal foods, which are the opposite of non-optimal. Optimal foods are nutrient dense. They are like meat, fish, eggs, cheese, cream, butter, leafy green vegetables, most of the other sort of above ground, colorful, eating the rainbow vegetables. Berry fruits and stuff like that are all what I would consider to be optimals or suboptimals. So suboptimals are those things in the middle. They're a bit sugary, but they've got quite a large amount of nutrition. And again, that I tend to advise people to eat optimal, enjoy the suboptimals occasionally, and try and avoid your non-optimals. But if you do want to choose it, then choose it without guilt, keep it in the meal, and then move on.
Yeah, that sounds great. And, even for me, when I hear, enjoy suboptimal, I'm like, well, I enjoy optimal. Is that okay? You enjoy? Because sometimes it's like we hear, that healthy foods is fine. You got to eat all that stuff, like you've got to, sort of an obligation. And then if you want to really enjoy yourself, then treat yourself with sugar. And I'm like, but I'm really enjoying myself with, like a steak.
Yeah.
Am I normal?
Well, one of the things I know I've done is I've reprogrammed what comfort food is. So as I was saying, my comfort food used to be that pint of ice cream. Now my comfort food is steak with broccoli, cream mushroom red wine sauce, with a little bit of onion and some pepper and really, and that is very comforting. So I know that I still have the addictive behavior. I still have the soothing myself with food behavior that hopefully at one point in my life, I hope that I won't need that anymore. But the food I choose to comfort myself with is now feeding my body. It is optimal, it's nutrient dense, and it's not harming me. So I don't see it as a problem, but I do see the fact that I still have the behavior as an issue for me to continue working on.
Yeah, because we've always got something to work on.
Oh, yeah.
It's never a done deal.
No.
So, and we were talking before about, that words shape your world, which I love, which I totally agree with, because we're both wordsmiths and we're both interested in language and linguistics and semantics. And you were telling me about the term weight loss. Can you tell me a bit more? Yeah, just rolled your eyes.
Yeah. Well, I believe that one of the things I'm here on this planet to do is to remove the words weight loss from society, because they are linguistically horrific. They are totally non-specific and they set you up for failure. So the word weight, well, weight is all of us. It is not only our fat, it is our muscles and our bones and our brains and our organs and the contents of our stomach and our bowels and our bladders. The only bit of that you want to get rid of is the fat. You actually want to gain bone density. You want to gain muscle density. You want to keep your organs fully plumped up with whatever they need to be plumped up with, be it your sort of the fatty matrix that is your brain or your proteiny matrix that is your heart. So you need to make gains in those areas. And where we get on the scale and look at our weight, that tells you nothing about your body composition, which is where I believe it's all at. So I'm much more of a fan of the tape measure as an indicator of progress. And of course, using your eyes and how you feel. Yeah. And of course, that word lost and lose. We lose has an implied find again to the brain. So we lose keys, we lose money, we lose people from our lives via like friendships that break up or people dying. And loss is always sad. And sometimes it can be utterly devastating, or it can go from like mildly annoying to completely world destroying. And when we're applying this word that has that implied find again and always is sad, why on earth are we applying that to something that should be wonderful and joyous? We are removing it, we're ditching it, we're burning it, we're dropping it, we're getting rid of it. We're not losing it because I don't want to find it. Where is it? Down the back of the sofa? No, I've got rid of it. I do not want that back. And by using, I often say to my clients, find the words that fit best for you. Myself is ditching the fat, shedding the inches.
Yeah, I've heard releasing as well.
Yeah, releasing is also a good word, because you're letting it go. You don't, it's that, but I like the ones where you don't want it back again. And so one of the keys of my system, one of the keys in the Hope Protocol is key 6, which is all about words shape your world and talking about better language. And then we use the specific example of weight loss, but you start applying better language to your experience gets better.
Yeah. Yes, totally. Sometimes I joke that if you really want to lose weight and that's the only thing that you want, you might as well go to the moon, because you'll be completely weightless there. Obviously your mass is the same, but your weight is 0.
Yeah. Technically you're a 6th, because there's a 1/6 of the Earth's gravity on the moon, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's good enough.
It's good enough, yeah. Go out to space, because weight, again, as you say, weight is your relationship to the Earth. It's how much the Earth is sucking on you in any one day, your relationship to gravity, and it is totally useless when it comes to actually measuring your health. Yeah. And we have a 4,000-year relationship with our weight. So it's a very hard thing for people to want to let go of, but we need to. It's just totally non-helpful.
Yes, I agree. And it's actually the cause of a lot of suffering.
Well, yeah, you think about people that let the number on the scale rule their life. But it's that whole, we haven't got a neon sign above our head saying I weigh 100 kilograms. You've got the how you look. And I know my weight hasn't changed in probably a year or so. I've been in and around 100 kilograms for the last, at least since the beginning of 2020, pretty much. And yet all of the people I know that I haven't seen or whatever, have you lost weight? No. Well, technically the answer to that question is no. But in terms of my size, in terms of my muscle mass, in terms of what's going on with me, I am smaller, I am more dense. And I did a calculation. I've got a fancy thing that does your body comp, and I've got 50 kilos of muscle in this body of mine.
Wow.
Which is 30 kilos more than the average woman of my age. I am 50. If I didn't have that extra 30 kilos, I'd be an ideal weight, but I'd still be very fat.
Yes, exactly. And also muscle is heavier than fat, as far as I know.
It's density. So fat is 17% less dense than muscle, which means it takes up 17% more space in your body, which is where I look like I've, quotes, lost weight, because of course we're conflating weight with size, which is again linguistically not helpful. I've got smaller, I've got more dense. I'm 17% denser than I was that same weight a year and a half ago.
There's your neon sign if you want one.
Absolutely. But it's not, again, it comes back to things like what we were saying about fat. Eating fat makes you fat. It's linguistically simplistic. Calories in equals calories out is linguistically simplistic. It's utterly elegant and totally wrong. And so that whole you've lost weight is where we've been educated linguistically to name I'm looking at you and you're smaller. That's how we've learned, rather than someone oh God, you've got smaller, what's going on? We don't say that.
They're not even asking you how you're feeling. It's just, and then for different people, getting smaller is not necessarily a good thing. Like, I'm already small, so for me, getting smaller would not be a good thing.
No.
But and if people see me, like, I did slim down a bit when I stopped eating sugar, but now I get the comments, don't slim down anymore, you'll disappear. I'm like, is anybody interested in how I feel?
Yeah, I've had that one, and you can see me. I don't know if you do a video version or if this is just audio.
It'll be just audio, but yeah,
but I am not the finished articles. I am still quite a large lady, considering. And my mum said to me the other day, but are you sure you want to get any smaller? And it's like, Mum, I've got plenty to spare still. As I waved my belly at her, because I can pick my belly up and wave it around. It's like, Mum, don't worry. I want to be smaller. This is cool and groovy, because if we want to do it in weight, I've got about 4 stone, although I don't put any stock in that at all.
4 stone, it's at 14 pounds in a stone, right?
Yeah, so I've got hang on a minute, let me do that in keys. I've got 30 kilograms or so to go.
Yeah.
But I don't put any stock in that. I've got 10 centimeters on my waist. That's what I look at, because if your weight, to get rid of, I'm not losing it, don't want to find it again.
You got me.
But no, it's that whole, if your weight is half your height, not your weight, your waist is half your height, you have that indicator of general health. My waist is 10 centimeters bigger than half of my height. So that's what I'm aiming at.
Okay. Yes. And I find it important that the question of, do you want to be this size or that size, or feel this way or feel that way? The question of what you want and how you feel, again, is in all the diet mentality that I've come across, and I try not to come across too much of it. It's like, what counts is how you look. And it's a given, a universal given, that everybody wants to be smaller. And I think what we don't have there is the individuality of each person.
Well, one of the things that, I mean, the whole, you've got the media, fashion media set us up to be these, that women have to be waif thin and have no muscle tone whatsoever. Men have to be chiseled and whatever, and have no body fat. And for most people, that's unachievable. I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTube video called Even Sally Gifford Cannot Be Sally Gifford. And
Oh, no, I haven't seen that one.
it's basically a Sally Gifford, who is a model, does a photo shoot, and then that photo shoot is photoshopped.
Yeah,
and they
cool.
make her legs longer, and they slim this bit down, and they make her eyes bigger, and they do this and do that. And she looks nothing like what they made her look like. So
Yeah.
even Sally Gifford cannot be Sally Gifford.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, the whole modeling world is a completely other podcast.
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
and I come from a dance background, that's not much better, I'll tell you that. Yeah.
I know that one of my previous partners had 2 children, and his daughter, we were out in the local cafe, and the local cafe is very Art Deco. It was built in that it's got Bakelite fixtures. It's a very good place for a photo shoot. And so we were there eating our breakfast, and this photo shoot was going on, and this poor model, and I say poor, she literally had no arms. They were just so skinny. And she had no, and her hair was so dry, and you could tell she had an inch worth of makeup on her face. And bless that Daisy looked up at me and goes, "I'm not supposed to look like that, am I?" It's like, "No, Daisy, you really aren't supposed to look like that." And it was the whole, she questioned the fact, because Daisy was is a lovely fit. At that point, she was a 10, and she was very thick, very slender, beautiful long hair. And she looked at me and went, "Am I supposed to look like that?" No, you're not.
Yeah, it's, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and it's a very touchy time in a young girl's life. We've been through it, and I don't know about other mothers, because I've never been another mother than myself. But so I've had people say to me, aren't you giving your daughter a bad example by denying yourself and refusing sugar? And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not denying myself anything, apart from going to the loo once a week, which I'm quite happy to deny. And second is, well, who are you to judge what I'm being as a role model to my child? As far as I can, how I live it is that I'm a role model for this, now 13-year-old girl. She was younger when I started going sugar-free. She has in front of her a woman who loves her body for what it can do, rather than just what it looks like.
Yep.
And for how I feel. And she has in front of her a woman who loves her food.
Yeah.
And I think I can't see anything wrong with that.
No, I actually go so far in my book as to call sugar poison, and I get a bit tough love. And why would you feed your children poison? Why would you feel the need that you have to feed them poison?
It's because it's not about the food, is it?
No, it's about this whole thing about what we've equated treats, reward, comfort. We've equated them with carbohydrate of various shapes. And I have a rhetorical question for which I've got no answers, which is, how have we equated something that is so harmful to our bodies as a treat? And all I can think of as a potential answer is, back when it was rare, because of course we didn't, until it was the beginning of last century, we didn't eat wholesale sugar. We didn't have it every day. We didn't have it every week. It was an occasional month. It was, the sweet thing was a treat at that point back in our history.
Yeah.
And it's almost become, in fact, it has become, it's so ubiquitous that it's not a treat anymore. It's just there. But yet we still have the same mentality as if it was rare, and if it was to be prized, and it was special. And that in itself is a problem.
Yes, and I did a whole episode about that on the podcast not so long ago, about sweet equals treat. And I was telling you, I looked in the dictionary for the definition of treat, and nowhere does it have anything to do with sweet or sugar. We've just given the meaning to the word treat, and we've just dumped a whole load of sugar on it.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, you've also got, give me some sugar is a euphemism for kisses.
Oh, we've got, a spoonful of sugar helps the
Yeah.
medicine go down. Oh, a whole load of them, right?
And in the UK, when I was growing up in the 80s, we had the milk tray and the black magic man, where he would come and give the box, leave the box of chocolates on the woman's bedside table, with a very stalkery behavior. But he would but the James Bond thing, he would bust in, he would leave the box of chocolates, and away he would go, because that was the sign of love.
Right. And and this was what happened when I stopped eating sugar, where other people said to me in different terms, but the message was, how are we going to show our love to you now that you don't eat sugar anymore?
Yeah.
And we found 101 ways. That's the good news.
Yeah, it's definitely, we have societally put sugar and sweets and chocolate equals love, reward, comfort in things. And again, talking to the coaching conversation I had tonight with one of my ladies around her friends coming around, giving her chocolate brownies, and it's that whole, yes, show me love, effectively the show me love in a different way, do acts of, goes back to the love languages thing, which I refer to quite a lot in my coaching practice, which I absolutely love that model, who I can't remember who gave it to us, but the quality time, the acts of service, physical touch, words of appreciation, and giving of gifts. And again, none of that involves sugar. But in terms of love languages, someone just come and have a cup of tea with me, sit down, spend some time. Or, I really need to get the shopping in because you just had an op and then it's all a bit whatever. I would love it. I'll give you the cash. You just go to the shops. Can you get me stuff? And so using love languages to allow people to contribute to you, because of course we have a human need for contribution. We need to look after our people. That assuages their need for contribution. It assuages your need to sort of give and be sort of whatever to them, and everybody gets happy and no sugar is involved.
Amazing. Yes. This is what I call life after sugar, by the way. The whole concept of it. Fantastic. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit more about your book and where people can find you?
Well, my third book is called How to Do Low Carb UK Style. And the reason I called it that is because a lot of the information that comes to the UK comes from the United States, where food context is different. Everything is way sweeter than we have over here. And of course, the way that food labeling works is totally different in the US, and it causes a whole bunch of confusion when it comes over here. So I specifically aimed that book at the UK market and the UK people and the UK food context. But in terms of the systems and the processes, it would work anywhere in the world. I am on social media as Low Carb in the UK, everywhere: Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. That's what my handle is. And my website is lowcarbinthe.uk.
All right.
So it's easy to find.
Oh, smashing. Thank you so much, Nikola. I'll put that information with this episode, and thank you so much for talking to me. It's not the last time we'll have a chat together.
I very much look forward to getting into some more stuff later, and thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Nikola, for this lovely chat. And it was recently pointed out to me by somebody in the United States how many accents there are on my podcast. And, as we were saying, Nikola and I, we're both into language, and I studied linguistics at university. And so I responded, well, who has the accent? Is it us or is it you? And this was a lovely chat with Nikola, and over and above our accents, I hope you took away some really important messages from Nikola about your relationship with sugar, about how you see comfort foods and treats, how you see diets, how you see human biology, and, well, basically, how you live your life after sugar. Because that's what it's all about. Living all the joy and the happiness and the comfort and the treats without all the negative side effects of sugar. And if you need some support and encouragement and guidance, as well as accountability to start or continue your life after sugar,
then go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the green button Join the Club to join us in the After Sugar Club. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please scroll down, rate it, and give it a review, and let me know how it's helping you in changing your relationship with sugar. And don't forget to subscribe too. Thank you for listening. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.